By now, you've probably seen Brandon Aiyuk's hour-long interview with Ryan Clark and Fred Taylor and Channing Crowder on The Pivot. And if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's extremely revealing and educational about who Brandon Aiyuk is. I think it's clear that up until now, we, or maybe just I, have had a completely fictional perception of who Brandon is. Until now, I thought he was like the shy one in the group, like the George Harrison of the Beatles, guy who doesn't really want attention, doesn't have much to say, and just wants to play ball. That is not who Brandon Aiyuk is. When you watch this video, it is clear that he absolutely wants the attention and loves the attention and has an extremely high opinion of himself. Is it an inflated opinion of himself? You be the judge. He calls himself early on in the interview an extended tackle because he blocks. That was rich. He also says that he's taken a back seat to certain teammates for years, and that time is done. It's his time. And I think it's pretty clear when you watch the interview that the way he feels about winning, team success, is that if the 49ers were serious about winning a Super Bowl, they would feature him as the go-to guy in the offense. Not Debo, not Kittle, not McCaffrey. Aiyuk is the best in Aiyuk's eyes. And he makes it really clear, like he has nothing particularly complimentary to say about any of his teammates in this interview. This interview is all a bunch of grievances from a player who's taking, frankly, a victim stance. He's victimized by the team because they didn't feature him and they're offering him a couple million less than he's worth. And we're supposed to sympathize with a guy who's only being offered $26 million per year. And we all know he's going to get what he wants eventually. So this is sort of an interesting way for him to make himself famous. He also, in the interview, says that he would be completely open to playing for the Washington Commanders and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And when he says this, Ryan Clark, who was with the Steelers for a long time, like gushes and starts recruiting Aiyuk to the Steelers, and Aiyuk starts like blushing. I mean, remember, he's not a free agent. It'd be one thing if he were not under contract, going on these interviews and talking about teams he'd like to play for. Fine. He's under contract with the 49ers. He has teammates. How do you think they feel about Aiyuk saying, yeah, could play for the 49ers or you could play for Washington? Either way. Whichever team is willing to pay him the most and give him the most targets, he'd be willing to play for. Is that a guy you want to be teammates with? That sounds like a guy who is only going to get more and more displeased with his role in the team. You give him $30 million a year, and now 5 catches a game isn't good enough. 6 catches a game isn't good enough. I think it's just real apparent throughout the entire interview that he really puts himself above his teammates, particularly Debo. I mean, over and over again, the hosts of the show say, well, you're clearly the best wide receiver on your team. And Brandon just sits there like, yeah. I mean, is he? He's a better route runner than Debo. Debo's better after the catch. Both guys have had one all-pro season, and Debo was a first-team all-pro. Aiyuk was a second-team all-pro. I think that one's up for debate. Anyway, when you watch this video, I think it's hard not to come away with the impression that Brandon has an extremely inflated opinion of himself, and he's more concerned about himself than the team. And I'm not saying he's T.O., but that was T.O. T.O. was humble, understated number 2 receiver when Jerry Rice and Steve Young were on the team. Then they left, and T.O. got paid, and he grew up, and he took over. And there was no amount of targets that were enough. Every week there was a grievance. He was a victim. He didn't get the ball enough. The quarterback was at fault. Is Aiyuk going that direction too? I mean, watch the video for an hour and plus and see how many compliments he has for Brock Purdy and compare that to how many compliments he has for Jaden Daniels. I mean, it's not like, it's the ultimate team sport and Brock really makes me look good and it's a pleasure playing with him and all my teammates really give me a lot of one-on-one opportunities. It's like, nah, I've taken a back seat. I've let other people get shine. I haven't been able to fully maximize what I can do. Now it's time. I thought it was a major turnoff. And if the Niners were hesitant about extending him before, I don't see how that could help the cause. I mean, this was an interview that Aiyuk initiated. He reached out to the pivot and made it happen. I do think he's going to get an extension any day. But man, what a bad look.